Welcome to Very Able, the story of variability, the podcast where we explore the wonderful world of education and delve into the power of honoring learning variability and understanding that all kids are very able. Your hosts, Breanne and Andrea, two educational consultants with IU8, will navigate the ever-changing landscape of instructional practices and share strategies, insights, and inspiring stories that will empower you to create truly inclusive learning environments in order to unlock the full potential of every student and to create transformative educational experiences for all. Come along as we explore variability to empower extraordinary. Hi, and welcome to our podcast called Very Able. We are Breanne Vinos and Andrea Zern, and this is our first episode in many. So first, we're going to give a little bit of background about ourselves. We are both IU8 educational consultants, and Andrea, I'm going to have you introduce yourself first.
Absolutely. Thanks, Breanne. Hi, everybody. As Breanne said, my name is Andrea Zern. I have been with the intermediate unit for 11 years now. 7 of those years I spent as an itinerant speech language pathologist, and recently, within the last 3.5, 4 years, have provided educational consultation in the areas of assistive technology and inclusive practices. So during that time, I've learned a lot, and I've changed my lens of looking at classroom spaces and how we can provide some supports for our students. And Breanne and I thought it would be a great idea to really team up and think outside the box and provide some resources to you folks as educators, parents, caregivers, and community members on how we can really partner with each other and with the students that we serve.
All right, and I am Breanne, and I had spent 8 years in a high school classroom. I taught English and theater, and then I moved into middle school administration, where I spent about 8.5 years. And I transitioned to the IU coming up on a year here in a couple of days.
Happy
And
anniversary!
Yay! I've been loving it. It's been a wonderful experience. I'm super excited to add this as part of what we do. But I actually sit on the MTSS and the Autism Initiative. So on one end, I work with teachers for MTSS, and then for autism, I go and I can observe and help teachers improve their practices. I hold trainings. I even have done some trainings for students just to better understand how to respond to their peers with autism. So it's been a wonderful experience. And as Andrea said, we're bringing this to you. We know that in 2023, when we're releasing this, that subs are about non-existent, and it's been very difficult for teachers to get out of the building. So we're hoping to bring the training to you. But also we wanted to reach a broader audience, like Andrea said, the community and parents. So welcome, and we hope that you subscribe and you're here for the long run.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome. And I think, Breanne, that as I get older and as I have 3 children, 2 in K-12 and 1 in preschool, my lens of education has certainly evolved. And I see that my kiddos have different needs, even though they might not be identified as a student that needs special education services. They don't have a diagnosed disability per se, but I see the struggles that they might have, each in their own perspective ways, and in how we continue to provide an educational system that's tailored to that one-size-fits-all approach. And we have a lineup of guests for this season of folks that are deeply rooted in the fact that we need to honor and empower our students in the variability that they bring to the classroom. So what do you have to say about that, Breanne?
Yeah, absolutely. As a mother myself, I have a daughter and a son. My daughter's in junior high, just transitioned, and my son's in 4th grade. And they couldn't be more different, and that goes with their learning needs, their emotional needs. And I think that the important thing that we focus on is that learner variability is not just for those who have a diagnosis. It's for all of our students, and just understanding how we can look at all of we're going to talk about the 4 parts that we'll be focusing on. How do we plan for that? And how do we reach all of our children? Because as we know, we are all individuals and none of us is the same. So hopefully you get something out of that today.
Absolutely. I was with a group of folks yesterday, and it got me thinking, because my co-trainer is not from the special education background, and I didn't realize this because I keep using the term learner variability, and she's like, Andrea, can you just, for all of us here that might not have been rooted in this and really understand what you're talking about when you talk about learner variability, can you just stop and describe? And I really had to think about it. And I thought about 2 examples, one that I've heard before, but then one that I don't think about often, but I do see major differences, especially within myself. So can I share those with you, Breanne?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first one is baking. How do you feel about baking? It's fall. It's a dreary weekend coming up. I feel like there should be something in the oven.
Well, Andrea, you gave me some zucchini not too long ago.
I did.
Out of your garden, and I actually made zucchini bread, and I've been making banana bread because my bananas don't go eaten, so they go bad. So got to use them. So I wouldn't say that I'm a connoisseur, but I will say I dabble.
Yes. So baking, I think, provides quite an array of variability, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to think about when you think about baking, right? First, you have to think about why you're baking. Who are you baking for? You have to really consider, like, am I baking for my kids and they have to eat X, Y, or Z? Are there eaters' preferences? As my kids don't like zucchini, so I have to make sure that they don't even see it, right, in the bread. But we know then they take a bite and they love it, right? So you have to think about those kind of dietary restrictions from the beginning, and the purpose of why you're doing something. But then from there are so many different options, right? Because you can bake from scratch, or you can use a yellow cake mix and mix it with your zucchini or banana, right? So we can go from scratch. We can use a box mix. Depends on how much time you have. Depends on, what recipe you want to follow. From there, right, then we can follow the written recipe that might have been handed down to us from our grandmother or our mom. Or we can browse Pinterest, right? Look at those Pinterest-worthy recipes.
Mine never look like the pictures, though.
Never,
I don't know.
never. And it's never as easy as they say it's going to be either,
Nope.
right? But we have that option. Some people, I'm big on this. Breanne, I don't know, have you ever used like a Google Assistant or an Alexa in the kitchen, right? Like, what do I do next, right? Or if you have a video option, like an Echo Show, or you're using your phone or your iPad in the kitchen to follow the steps online. How do you want to find those directions, and how do you best follow those? So that really is based personally on your preferences and your needs. So those are some examples. But then in addition to that, right, that's just like the start. What am I going to bake? Why am I going to bake it? And how am I going to follow directions? But then there's so many different tools, and we see this all the time, right? All the time in classrooms, because technology is changing every minute of the day. But there are so many tools that we can choose, right? Some of us might like a whisk or a wooden spoon. Some of us might have a stand mixer. Some of us might not. So we just use the hand mixer, right? But you need to decide on what you're going to use. You can have a square pan, a circle pan. What do you want it to look like? And then don't get me started on the icing options, because to me, I'm still looking for that whipped icing, and I can't perfect it, but
I gotta hook you up with my mom. She's the best baker ever.
Yes.
Which is why I don't do it often, because she'll keep me fed for a very long time. But her whipped icing, yep.
Oh, I need that recipe. So there are so many ways that we can change and personalize. And that's really what we talk about when we talk about variability, because we all have different tools in our toolbox. We all have different backgrounds, and we all have different preferences and needs and purposes in life. And that's the same for education and in the classroom. And then the other example that I thought of, have you ever gone to IKEA?
I have.
I love
So
IKEA.
I love it, but it's overwhelming.
It's a lot, right? But I love it, and I love to walk through. But then, you get to that end aisle, and you're like, oh gosh, and there's like 16 boxes for the dresser, and you have to make sure you get all of them, and then you take them home, right? But thinking about variability in that regard too, where you have that purpose, everybody wants to build a solid dresser that's going to hold things, but I can do it a couple of different ways, right? I can look at the pictures. I can read the text, right? Sometimes there's not even text on there, right? Because we know we're going to have folks from different countries, right? IKEA serves the world. So maybe we don't all read and speak English. So we need some pictures, maybe. Maybe you can take a look at, YouTube and search a video, right? So there's just so many different ways that we can gain information, represent information, and so many different ways that we can express what we want to do as well.
I love those analogies. That really sums it up, especially for people who have not heard of what learner variability is. And we can apply that to everything in life. Like just thinking on our daily activities, how different we are just choosing how we're going to record this. Like you have different resources than I do, and we're still ending up doing the same task, but we all reached it in a different way. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the foundational principles of universal design for learning. So we know that there's no average brain, and my way of thinking and learning is different than yours. UDL and the Learning Brain is a publication that was put out that describes how there is no average brain, and that thinking and learning is as unique as our fingerprints. So I think that really hones in on, we have all of these personal choices every day, but then when it comes to education, again, we're trying to throw that circle peg in a square hole, and sometimes it's just not fitting very well because we're not allowing or thinking about or designing for those differences that we know are going to be there.
Yeah. So if we're trying to help teachers kind of better understand that, are there is there like a beginning point that we can look at? Maybe some 4 pillars of what learner variability are?
Absolutely. So we can kind of think broadly and contextually about the ways that we're going to be variable and the way that our students are going to be variable. And those pillars of variability are learner background, social and emotional learning, right? Which has really become a huge thing, right? None of us are okay anymore. We are all overwhelmed.
Amen, sister.
In 2023, right? So we have to think about social and emotional connections, and we have to think about that piece. We can also think, right, about cognition and the way students are able to think and learn, right? We know that we're going to have students with learning disabilities. We know that we're going to have students with sensory needs like hearing impairment, visual impairment. And then, of course, the content area, which is, as teachers, right, or as related service providers, we got into the fields that we did because we love what we do. So we have to think too about how that content area is going to change how we teach. And Breanne, like with those 4 pillars, I think you have a tool that might be really beneficial and really deep diving into and embracing that next step, or that little first step in understanding variability and realizing that there are things that I can do now, today, come Monday in the classroom, to really honor that variability and ensure improved or increased success from our students.
Yes, I do. And I will say, I wish that this was out there whenever I was in the classroom, because this would have saved me a lot of thinking. I mean, you really kind of have to think outside the box, and this tool is phenomenal. and gives a ton of resources. So I do know that, Andrea, our audience may be on YouTube, but also on a podcast. So I am going to share my screen, but that does not mean that I'm going to just talk about that. So if you are listening to this, we'll drop the links so that you can explore this on your own. So do I have my screen shared? Can you see that?
I see it.
All right, so this is by digitalpromiseglobal.org, and they call it the Learner Variability Navigator, and it's part of their Learner Variability project. So it's out there, and this is amazing. So if you scroll to the top of the page, there's actually like a walkthrough. It's a tour, but I'm not going to do that. We'll just go to, this is an endless tool, and you could deep dive into this for hours, and it really does take you down a rabbit hole of amazing resources. But the one we're going to focus on today, we'll show you two, but the first one is called the Learner-Centered Design Tool. So I'm going ahead and just click on that, and it takes you into this screen that actually says taking a whole learner perspective. So what you can do is there's a content area and grade, and you can choose math or literacy or even adult learners, which I love because sometimes we forget about our adult learners. So I'm just, for the sake of argument, going to pick literacy 4 to 6. I'm going to stick my email address in there. And it will take me to these factors that have the 4 pillars that Andrea was talking about. So it has the student background, social and emotional learning, cognition, and literacy, but it's literacy because that's the content area that I chose. So if you choose math, it'll have math. And then under each of those is a menu that you can choose to focus. So say my student background, I am concerned about hearing and safety. Maybe there's something that happened in this student's past that they don't feel safe at school. I need to recognize that, and I need to make sure that I'm aware. So then in social and emotional learning, I'm going to have them have that sense of belonging as an option. If you're listening to this, there is tons of things to choose from. So I really encourage you to dive in. And then so for cognition, I know that their attention's been a little bit off because, again, like something's not right in class. They don't feel good. So I'm going to focus just on attention. And then for literacy, we're really struggling with foundational writing skills. So I chose that. And then you pick next. And it'll map out, it's thinking right now, but it'll have connected factors. So if you choose one, it'll give you other things that you can pull up. So if you don't want to select any of those, you choose next, and it will take you to suggested strategies that are, again, endless. So the first one says strategies that improve or support all of your factors, and it brings up a collaborative writing. Then the next one has many of your factors, so it may not have hit all of them, but these colored boxes will tell you, if you hover over them, which factors this strategy will work for. So say I want to choose checklists and rubrics because it has 3 of my strategies. If I click on that, it comes up as a pop-up, and it gives me bullet points, and it tells me where on this continuum of the 4 pillars it will hit. And I can even click learn more, and it takes me into a very comprehensive menu about checklists and rubrics. There's some videos here. It says how to design it into your classroom. It gives additional resources, and you can do this for so many different factors and create, for each child, you can save a learner profile. So when you are planning lessons, you can go right into that learner profile. And if you co-teach, you can share that profile with your co-teacher. So that's, like I said, you can dive into this for hours. But the second thing that I really love is the Learner Variability Teacher Guide. So this is a download. It's 18 pages, and it really walks you through what is learner variability. And it has videos you can watch. It teaches you again a little bit about the navigator that I just walked through. And from there, it really deep dives into why it's evidence-based and designed with context in mind, design this powerful learning. And then again, it comes back to those 4 pillars, which create the whole child learner. So it really focuses not just on those students who have a disability, but it's for all of our students in class. And it really gets you thinking outside of the box of that one size fits all.
Let me ask you a question, Breanne.
Yes.
When do you think we should start thinking about and planning for variability in the classroom? A lot of times I see folks kind of in the classroom and maybe a semester in or that first 9 weeks, right? We're just going to give it some time and then maybe we'll implement some different strategies after that first report card period, right? What would you say to that? And what are some ways that this Learner Variability Navigator might address that planning and preparation phase?
Yeah, I would say we should start planning yesterday. You know, too many of our kids are not where they need to be. They're not getting that support and they're not making progress. So when we say, okay, we're overwhelmed, we have too much, this will be that first step. That first step to give you those resources. If you don't know where to start, it has phenomenal strategies that you can take your current lessons and just add these to them. So again, you know, I hear teachers that say this is just one more thing, but I would push back and say, but this is the thing. You know, we can't let our kids struggle anymore. And it's becoming the forefront, which is great. I think we have a lot of work to do, but this right here is proof that it's imperative that we teach focusing on the whole child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of that is understanding too that even though we might go through this process with one specific child in mind, and it might come up with some strategies that are great, and will absolutely target that one child's needs, if we utilize some of those strategies across the board, it creates what we call that curb cut effect, right? So again, thinking about preferences and needs and how some things can really open the door, we think about that curb cut effect. Whereas, you know, the curb cuts down to the level of the road, and it was initially done for the Americans with Disabilities Act to make things legally compliant with accessibility for people in wheelchairs, right? But that doesn't mean that me pushing a stroller as a mom or going to the airport pulling luggage, that I don't use that curb cut. So the things that we can do and plan for, and the variety of students that we can plan for and needs that we can plan for, it's going to help everybody. Just like that curb cut can help, you know, the mom in the stroller, the luggage puller, right? Or as we know, we take a lot of work to and from work sometimes. So sometimes we have some luggage behind us that we're pulling out of the door. But I think that is a very important piece, and it's not hurtful, and it doesn't take away from any of those other folks or any of those other populations. So I think that that's something that we continue to think about in that framework for universal design, where we think about those margins, right? We think about those kids that maybe are the furthest away from their target goal, and how can we help them? And when we implement strategies that can help them, we implement strategies that are great for everybody.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we really need to focus, that it's okay that it helps everybody. You know, sometimes that old school mindset is, well, what they have is different, and that doesn't help everybody. You know, I don't want to give that to everybody, but it's okay to give that to everybody, because as we talked about at the beginning, we all reach a goal differently. And what's good for one could be good for all. What's good for one may not be good for all. And that's where we look at each person individually and teach to them.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I think I could talk about learner variability and universal design for hours. But thinking about this introduction, what are some of the other things that we're going to, we're going to lay this foundation of learner variability. What else do you think is on the horizon for our topics and our discussions?
Oh, there's so much, Our main goal is to focus on the fact that labels don't hold people back. And that's where we want to focus on neurodiversity. We're going to bring in some guests who have been extraordinary, regardless of any disability that they have. And also we have, as you mentioned, some interviews coming up of people in the community and parental advocates and resources that will benefit teachers and parents alike. I think we're going to focus on some community resources just for the general public to understand. And do I spoil who we have coming in? And do I spoil it?
Why not? The more the merrier. And I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to this very much.
So we have Dr. Paula Kluth, who will be joining us for our podcast in April of 2024. And if you don't know who she is, you've got to look her up. Inclusion Rules is her website, and she's a plethora of knowledge. And we'll be talking about AAC and there's just so much, Andrea.
So many things to think about, right? But don't let that overwhelm you, right? Because this is the time where we can build community, we can make connections. And speaking of, if you would like to connect with either Breanne or I, we will make sure that our contact information is in our show notes. Please feel free to reach out. We are here to support school districts, related service providers, administration, teachers. We're here to support parents, and we're here to provide that community connection to ensure that we are educating our students to become active and meaningfully integrated and inclusive in our community.
Yes, and along with our show notes, we also will have a survey, so please feel free to fill that out, and there's an opportunity to give us feedback, and we will respond to that feedback and focus our episodes on what you, the listeners, would like to hear. So if you haven't already, like and subscribe, and we hope that you join us next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Breanne, and thanks to all of you listeners who are here exploring variability to empower extraordinary. See you next time.